Welcome to the Building Better Software Teams podcast, where we help technologists in all roles gain influence, expertise, and advancement through team building and thought leadership. From tech stack to team culture, we dig into everything and anything that can help you and your team achieve success. And now your host, Mark Schneider.
Thanks for joining us. Today we have as our guest Jason Von Ruden, who is the facilitator of the Wisconsin.net user group. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So let's get started with just tell us a little bit about the Wisconsin.net user group.
Sure. The Wisconsin.net user group was founded 19 years ago at the start of .net. It was actually one day before the official launch. We have about 1,800 members with about 60 to 80 people meeting monthly. And we feature 90-minute, very technical presentations on .NET technologies. And what I mean by that is it could be server, desktop, mobile, cloud, and even client-side JavaScript frameworks.
So it's not just .NET or .NET Core technology. You cover a variety of different technologies that kind of surround the stack. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. We're targeting more of like a full-stack developer, .NET developer. And to do that, you really need to be fluent in front side as well as the backside API.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's pretty difficult, I think, to make a career purely out of just .NET, especially in this day and age where a lot of what you're building is web applications or services and things like that. So that makes a lot of sense. Yes. So you might cover spas and front end frameworks and things like that. Yeah,
as well as like Azure Cloud Services, like how do you configure them as well.
Cool. How did you become the organizer of this? Like, how did that happen?
I started out being real active in the group and just attending meetings regularly for many years. And then I took that up a notch and got more involved with the group. We had a local Milwaukee conference called Deeper in .NET, and I was a part of the board or the group to help put that event on. And then about 6 years ago in 2014, the existing president was relocating to California, and he was looking for someone to take over, and that's when I jumped in as president.
So you were already kind of contributing and helping run it. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I started out just attending, and then after that, I got more involved, like at one of the conferences that we did, and then from there, I had an opportunity to become the president, which I was happy to do and give back rather than just taking from the community.
Yeah.
Giving back was more of what my goal was.
Is Deeper.net still a thing, or is that gone?
It's not a thing anymore. There's a lot of other conferences that have stepped up to fill the void since then.
Gotcha. Okay. You're obviously involved in this because you are a .NET developer, right? Like you've been doing that for a while too?
Definitely. I've been a full stack developer in .NET for like 20 some years. So
it fits nicely with your full-time job. You're able to kind of balance the two, it sounds like.
Right. Instead of just for note, most of the people that attend the group are actually developers. There's hardly any recruiter type folks. So if you want to get here and see raw technical stuff, we're going to crack Visual Studio open on every presentation that we do, or at least show code and talk about it.
Cool. I guess one question I have to ask now, in this day and age is how has COVID impacted the group? In the past, it sounds like you were, I know you were meeting at different locations. That was kind of one of the cool aspects of it is you could go visit different locations. What's changed now that the pandemic has occurred?
Yeah, COVID brought big time changes. In the past, we were always in person. We always had free food that sponsors would provide, and we would meet in person, like you said, at different locations in the greater Milwaukee area. Since then, we transitioned to virtual meetings. We did try out several different technologies to figure out which, like Zoom versus Jitsi Meet and other things to see which one works best for us, while still keeping the personal nature. We actually hosted more events after going virtual. I had more opportunities to find speakers, and the number of people that attended actually has gone up compared to before. And it's easier to find speakers now that they don't have to meet in person.
I have to think one of the reasons for the increased attendance is it's really hard to network these days. It's, you can certainly still do it over the, the virtual tools and things like that. But there's no more lunches. There's probably less, ad hoc or last minute get-togethers, things like that. So something like what you're providing, the .NET user group, the fact that it's still there, it's still happening even more frequently now. I guess I'm not surprised that you're increasing in attendance, because that's probably becoming a more valuable resource for folks that are, working from home or unable to interact with other people on a regular basis.
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten feedback from the people attending saying that it's even better now that we've done a mix of virtual. Well, all virtual now.
And you mentioned you have access, or you're finding that you have opportunities to work with a larger pool of speakers now. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, definitely. It's easier for me to find speakers, one, because a lot of other events are virtual. And so now I'm attending other virtual events to find more speakers, as well as when conferences were available, I would have to physically go there, which I did every year, but it was harder. Now it's way easier. And then I can kind of say, is a speaker any good before we bring them on, or is it something we would find valuable for the group? Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense. So even you yourself are attending more events, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. That's great. I feel like that's how we learn and grow, is by going to these events and hearing other people's perspectives. So that's really cool. Okay, so one of the questions I have is, and we kind of, I think, just started to answer this a little bit as we talked about, the fact that it's hard these days to go out and attend meetings because of the pandemic. But one of the questions I have is, with blogs and all the online resources that are out there, what is the advantage of attending a user group versus just trying to do this on your own?
One of the key advantages to attending a user group versus just reading a blog or other online events is the speakers bring their own personal experiences with them, and you get an opportunity to ask questions. You can always go read a blog and find more information. This is more about finding out one person's experience and journey using it, and that'll give you a lot more, hey, don't do this because you're going to fall.
It personalizes it, right?
Right.
It makes it it can hit home because they're sharing probably the same experiences that you have.
Definitely. And you can ask questions and then get answers to questions you have.
I'm going to break this up into two parts. Let's start with what was your favorite topic? I mean, you've been doing this for some time now, so I'm asking you to reach back into your memory, and what has been one of your favorite topics that you've covered over the years?
Well, in general, my theme is I like the latest, newest, shiniest technology. But my most favorite talk was my API Wars talk that I had about 3 months ago. It was a really cool talk where we brought in someone, and we're all talking about local professionals, not like regional speakers, someone to talk about REST, someone to talk about gRPC, and then another person to talk about GraphQL. And that had a lot of great user participation, even in the virtual meeting era.
So it was gRPC, REST, and GraphQL, and they were all pitted against each other. And sounds like the idea there was everybody. I guess, how did they approach it? Did each of those three speakers make a case for why it was better, or was it more of just like, here's how I've used it? How did that work?
Sure. Yeah. API Wars starts out as like more of a panel discussion. But in order to set up for the panel, we needed to have level set everyone, because I don't know if everyone's familiar with each of those API technologies. So we had a pros and cons, as well as their impression and the projects they used it on. After we level set everyone on what these things are, then we went and had a panel discussion where I had some canned questions, but we quickly jumped off script and asked and answered questions from everyone attending. And I think I got about 100 people actually attend. I'm not talking about sign up. I'm talking about actually showed up for the virtual meeting. So
that's awesome.
And a lot of audience participation. It was really good.
Do you think people walked away from that with, did people walk away from that thinking, oh, this is GraphQL's the way I want to go from now on? Or, did it create converts, do you think, or did it create a different type of effect as people walked out of there?
I think the effect was the answer I would give you. It really depends on your project and what your goals you're looking for. Because each technology does a few things really good, And if that's your goal, you'll gravitate towards that specific technology versus another one. And that's basically, you have the tools in order to make an informed choice going forward.
That's really cool, because I think one of the biggest challenges we face on teams is selecting tools and making those types of design decisions. And a lot of times it seems kind of arbitrary. Like I've been on teams where we've decided, we're going to be a React team. And, we don't know why. We have a preference for it. And that's okay. But I think something like API Wars is cool because it gives you the ability to hear different sides of the story, hear about the advantages and disadvantages of a specific piece of technology. And going back to my original question, like, what can you get from a user group that you might not be able to get from a blog? I think that's even more important when you're talking about making technology decisions. Hearing personal experiences with different types of solutions or libraries is really important in making a decision for your situation.
Yep.
So that's really exciting. So API Wars, that sounds like that was a pretty cool event.
Yeah.
Do you do that often? Do you have that type of format on a regular basis, or do you tend to focus more on just like a specific topic?
In the past, I've been focusing on a specific topic. I was doing an experiment with some panel discussions, and I think based on the feedback and the success of that one, we're going to continue with more of that for 2021.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think that's really cool. Do you feel that was, from a participant perspective, that was one of your more popular topics, or have you seen that participants tend to like other types of topics? Like, what I'm really interested in is, what do people seem to gravitate towards when they attend your meeting? What topics have been, successful? Which ones, seem to really resonate with your members?
Yeah, the types of topics that resonate, I usually try to do a good mix. I'm not always hitting like a client-side framework or like ASP.NET, MVC, or Blazor. I pick different topics to kind of round it out, because I don't know who and what experience levels they have, and rather than hitting the same things, I kind of mix it up. In general, the theme is the more latest of the technologies is usually what is the most popular,
so
and
whatever's
it constantly
new
changes. Yeah,
that makes sense. In what ways can somebody participate in a user group? And I would imagine there's varying degrees of participation. What do those look like?
Main ways that I would, and the most popular one that I would recommend, is just attend the meetings. Learn more information, and network with people. Meeting other people in the industry and other professionals is a very important thing to your career, and just meeting with other people. Next step, which I'm always looking for speakers, so becoming a speaker at the user group, get your brand or your name out there, or just to learn a new topic. And then the final thing I would say, if you are attending, help get the word out and invite other people to attend.
Sure. Yeah. Share the value you're receiving with others. Help them.
Yep.
Help them find that resource as well. It makes perfect sense. When we come back from the break here, we're going to talk a little bit more about different ways you can participate and what that looks like, and some of the specifics around that.
You are listening to the Building Better Software Teams podcast. For more info about this podcast, including episode notes, visit 7samurai.dev.
Jason, for somebody who's thinking of becoming a speaker, that's one of the things you had mentioned before the break, that is a way that somebody can participate within a user group. What should they be really thinking about? Like, and I'm asking this for my sake, because I've never given a talk, and to me that's always seemed like something that would be really challenging and time consuming, and it's almost kind of scary to some extent to get up in front of a large group of people and give a talk. What would you recommend for somebody who just wants to start out and wants to get into the kind of the speaker side of things?
Some of the best speakers that I had are just your average developer. You don't have to be super knowledgeable about a specific topic or anything of that nature. An approach that works well for a lot of my speakers is they're just passionate about a specific technology that they're familiar with. And then the other side of that coin is I've had developers that, like you, that would just say, I want to learn a new topic. And so what they would do is pick that topic, and then in researching that topic and learning themselves, they would write a talk about it. And they're in a great position because they had the same questions that you're probably having when you're first introduced to a new topic. And then as far as practicing to get ready, speaking internally at your company in smaller settings like a lunch and learn, for example, would be the way to go, and then build up to a bigger group like the user group. That's
a great idea. Start, then you can get some feedback too, I would imagine. And that's what this whole thing feels like, is it's an iterative process. It's almost like MVP is build your basic talk as you're learning.
Yep.
And, get the kind of the core pieces in place. Like, what are the fundamentals of this thing that you're learning to use, and then start to like go back and refine it and add more. But getting that feedback piece is the hard part. Yeah. And I think maybe, that also helps answer my question is if you need some confidence before speaking in front of a large group, the best way to do that is speak in front of some smaller groups, get that feedback, get your rhythm down, and then you'll have confidence to kind of give that a new and better version of that talk the next time you do it to a larger group.
Yep. And then feedback you can incorporate and then iterate, just like you said, MVP.
Yeah, that's cool. For somebody thinking of organizing a group, and one of the things I'll just say is, like, your group's been around for a long time. I really love the fact that the group was created like right before .NET was launched. And if you think about it, there's a lot of other technologies that are new and up and coming. Plenty of opportunities for somebody to start small groups, that focus on those new technologies. What would you recommend for somebody who wants to organize one? What are the things that you found have been successful and important in order to, maintain that group and keep it up and running and keep people interested?
One of the things that I do is I reach out to other groups. Like if I'm doing a client-side framework talk, I'll incorporate the JavaScript framework groups as well. They can help spread the word as well as getting speakers. So that's another way that you could help get started. There's some community industry groups. An example in the .NET area is the .NET Foundation. They have speaker resources as well as ways to get the word out. You can also ask the group leaders by attending the groups and then getting their ear and say, hey, what works for you? There are tips for maximizing attendance based on how you send out your notifications.
Sure. I would imagine that's really complex, like what day you're scheduling, how you notify, how you all of those types of things. It's probably I would imagine pretty complex.
Yeah. And then the two other things I would say that are important, at least for groups, my group, is having statistics available for prospective sponsors. When I was meeting in person, I would have a local company pay for the food so that everyone attending could have free food, pizza or whatever it was. And then the last thing I would say, always have your future events published, even if you don't know who's speaking, because one thing, how do you know if the group's still active if they don't have any future events posted out there?
Gotcha. So maybe create a placeholder and say there's going to be a meeting this date to be determined.
Yes.
But just making sure that people know that it is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is one of the last questions that I have, and I think it's probably one of the more important ones. Why should employers consider encouraging their employees to be part of these groups, either as a participant or as a speaker?
The number one thing would be free training for your employees. That's probably pretty big, especially with COVID and other things going around. And the other one would be getting the word out to the community about your company, so you can build goodwill by either sponsoring the food or just getting your brand out in front of the developers in the area. And then finally, advertising and filling open roles. You can get your roles out in front of a very heavily developer-focused group. We have 1,800 people on part of the group and, up to 100 people attending every meeting, so you'd have a pretty big audience.
So it's a great recruiting tool for companies. I'd also add if as a company, if you have employees that are speaking at these events, this positions them as experts and kind of, by extension, shows that your organization has that in-house expertise, which is valuable, I think, and again, as a recruiting tool, because I think developers like to work with other developers who are knowledgeable. And in addition to compensation, I think developers are always looking for opportunities to grow and build their skill set, and they know that the best way to do that is to surround themselves with other experts. So I would encourage organizations to find those folks that do have that passion where they want to talk about those things, to encourage them to help those employees go out and speak in these types of environments, because it helps the organization, helps that individual. It's just really good for everybody around, all around. And again, it's brand recognition too, as Jason mentioned. So
yeah,
I'm a big believer in encouraging people to network, and I think right now this is probably one of the best ways to network. One thing I feel like I missed, I want to make sure we come back to, is networking. There is an opportunity to network in these virtual events too, right? The tools that you use allow for chat and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, the tools that I'm allowing use there's two ways you can get network participation, is via just the chat text, and I usually open up for anyone to ask questions at the end, or and speak and ask their question. So there's two ways that I go about that.
Excellent. That's great. Cool. Well, I guess let's end with this. There's a couple of ways people can learn more about the .NET user group. We will post the links. I'll post those on my site, on Seven Samurai. Why don't you just run through real quick, what are the ways that somebody could, and I guess one thing I'll mention for you, Jason, is, since everything's virtual now, it's all recorded, which is great. You weren't doing that before, right?
Right. No, after about middle of the year, I started recording them and we now have a YouTube channel for the user group.
So what's great is, even if you can't make the meeting, you can always go back and watch it later. You obviously can't participate at that point, but you can still capture that content and get an opportunity to hear that speaker. So, so YouTube's one way. What are some other ways they can interact with your group?
Meetup.com is where the group's main listing is, and where you can sign up for that meeting. So if you search Meetup for Wisconsin.NET User Group, you'll be able to find it there. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I do want to mention that we talked a lot about the API wars, and that is one of the talks that is on our YouTube channel. So if you want to get kind of what the group is about, a really good example, that would be a great place to start.
That's awesome. So we can actually listen to that API war conversation online. Yep. Awesome. I'm going to go check that out. That's really cool. I didn't know that. Great. Well, Jason, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Look forward to hearing more from you and seeing what new topics your group presents.
Thank you. It's glad to be here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Building Better Software Teams podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. Until next time.